How are you?
Good. Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Yeah. It's been a couple years.
Since you've been on this thing?
Yeah. I think we do. That's like our schedule. We do this like every 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It has. It's been too long.
Mhm.
It's been far too long.
Yeah.
Tell us what the latest in Entrata. And by the way, as we sit here, we publicly announced yesterday, just the day before we're recording this, that you have joined the Silicon Slopes board, which is awesome to have you part of that. You've been on it for a bit, but we announced it officially. Response from the community has been incredible. Everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Super excited.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So thank you for doing that. Maybe we start there. Like, why is Silicon Slopes important to you? Why is Utah important to you? And I saw your post when we announced it, and you tagged like 15 of like the most incredible leaders who have been like an influence in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I've thought this for a long time. So when I started my first business in 2003 in school at BYU, I grew up in a pretty blue collar environment. Like my grandpa was a sheep farmer when he was little. My dad was in construction, sold garage doors. Like the kind of like business people I knew were like insurance salesmen and real estate agents that lived near me. That's like kind of the extent I knew. I remember actually Bruce Huff, Derek and Julianne's dad, was one of our neighbors, and he taught me about the stock market when I was like 14. And it blew my mind that there was this thing out there.
Yeah.
So I just didn't have a lot of access to that. I was going to be a doctor my whole life. Like I didn't ever look into business. So I started this business in college, and I had no idea what I was doing. And there was nothing called Silicon Slopes. There was the UTC, the Utah Tech Council, that it was more of like a sponsorship thing, like through events. It wasn't really like a mentorship program.
Yeah, it's like a chamber.
Yeah. So my only option was I just started like meeting people. It started with a couple of people at BYU, John Richards and Gary Williams. And then John introduced me to Josh James. And then Josh introduced me to, Jeff Curl. And it just kind of went. And I was really curious, and I wasn't afraid to go approach people. Like I approached people like Patrick Byrne and Tom Stockham just at random events. And I just walk up, and I think honestly, most of them felt bad for me. They're like, this guy has no idea what he's doing. He has no business starting a business. And to be honest, most of them took pity on me. I mentioned like Tom Stockham was the CEO of Ancestry at the time, Bob Whitman at Franklin Covey, and John Johnson at Overstock. Like they bought my product knowing it didn't exist yet. They served as like reference customers for me, like before they probably should have.
That's so invaluable.
Yeah. Like they just, they gave me like real money. They gave me revenue for a product that they knew was a PowerPoint presentation at first. And we got it there, and everything was great. Like Josh James taught me how to raise money. And then, I've had people on my boards over the years, like Greg Butterfield, and I've gotten close with people like Jeremy Andrus and Todd, and Ryan, that have taught me how to like, not maybe taught me to be a leader, but have been an example and given me like, little pieces that I've used in my own leadership style while I've been trying to figure out who I am as a leader. Like, I think that's a journey we all have to go through. And I think it takes a couple decades to, if I try to be Josh James, that's going to go really poorly for me. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. If I try to be Jeremy Andrus, that's going to go really poorly for me. I just feel really fortunate and lucky. I grew up here. I went to South Jordan Elementary School, South Jordan Middle, Bingham High School. Like Utah's my home. And I guess when I started to feel this pull back is we went and moved to Southern California. I lived in Southern California for a couple of years. Still love it there, but that's when I started to gain appreciation. Like I watched when I was down there when COVID happened, and I watched the difference between Orange County and Utah. And it was just crazy to see how the community here just like banded together and just like fought through that thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that really happened anywhere else.
No, it was wild.
Yeah.
I don't know if it happened other place, but having been like a major part of that was wild.
And you were at the forefront.
We also got a lot of negative press because of it.
Yes. No good deed goes unpunished. Good lesson.
Who are these tech guys? I don't know.
Good lesson for all of us. That's when, and then I came back, moved back in 2021 full time, and, it's been at Entrata for about 4.5 years now. And I just feel like we did that Fourth Node podcast where we went and interviewed all the folks
By the
that
way,
kind of built this
such
place.
a great, everyone needs to listen to that podcast. That's such a great
Oh,
podcast.
thanks. It was
So
fun.
glad you did that.
It was
so
fun.
cool.
It's hard to do a podcast. I have so much respect for you and others that do podcasts. It's hard. It's scheduling's hard and content and editing. It's all really difficult. I don't know how many we did, 15 or 20, but got to guys like, we got to Bruce Bastian before he passed away, which I'm really proud of.
That's so awesome.
Like he had kind of an untold story of at WordPerfect, and got some of the early Novell people. And then, Tom Stockham about Ancestry, and Paul Allen, who started Ancestry, Jeremy Andrus from Skull Candy to Trey. Like it was Kareen, who's seen a lot of these. She was at WordPerfect, at Novell, at Altiris. And, the reason I wanted to do that podcast is I feel like the people in their 20s or 30s now, like I was in 2003, I don't even think they know what these companies were.
Yeah.
I don't think people know Omniture was, which really kind of created Silicon Slopes. So I just feel the need to like maybe bring some awareness. And now I'm getting a little older. I just turned 46, and just realizing like I've learned some stuff. I've been lucky that these people took me in and taught me things. Like I remember one night Josh James went through a term sheet with me at like 1:30 in the morning when I was really, really young, and explained to me what anti-dilution protections were, and explained to me all this kind of stuff. Like it was invaluable. And now, it's ChatGPT is great. We can learn a lot from it, but it's better. I think if we can continue this environment and community where we're helping each other and not competing with each other, it's just going to be better for everybody, and just continue to make this place really, really special.
Yeah, I do think that is what is so unique, and it really I think that culture comes from Josh. I think you're right about that. Like Omniture proving that you can get a Silicon Valley exit in the state of Utah without having to move your company out, without having to compromise, and moving your headquarters to Silicon Valley, bringing Adobe here. I mean, like what he did there, and his willingness to, which maybe is not as well known. We know it, but it's maybe not as well known. His willingness to mentor, go to lunch with any entrepreneur, like help them, give them advice, always be on their side over the investor side. Even when like he may even be an investor in their company, he's always in the entrepreneur side. Like, he really did set a tone that I think is still kind of reverberating.
Yeah. It's a really special part of Utah of all these folks that are just willing to pitch in. Like it's probably 100 people that went to these cold blind lunches with me, not knowing who I was or what I was doing. And I just would email them, and they would show up. It's kind of nuts. Like just even driving down here today and reflecting on that, I'm like, I probably don't do that enough. I probably can do a better job of being like the people that went to lunch with me and kind of paying that forward. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, you also get stuck. Like you don't do it too much. Right. I mean, there's this interesting balance. Not that there's plenty of people who would, want to go to lunch with you and would learn, you know what I mean? But you can kind of get lost in that too. And there's this interesting like balance between like focusing on building your company, what you're doing, and the opposite. Right. And I think, that balance is really cool.
Yeah. And I think that's
when you have people who've figured it out.
Yeah. And I think that's where Silicon Slopes can come in, because I can't get to lunch with everybody, but I could go, I remember at one of the Silicon Slopes tech summits a few years ago, I got Chris Harrington and Sterling Snow and Than Hancock from Podium in a room to talk go to market. Like I think everyone in sales should be at that kind of thing. And I think that's that I'm excited about with Silicon Slopes, is to just jump in if we can provide those forums for people to learn. Yeah. And that is where I met a lot of these people. Is I just go to these UTC meetings and like the AICP, like random stuff. If there was something, I would show up all by myself and just see if there was anyone there that was interesting for me. And I think Silicon Slopes does a really good job of that, of bring good minds and people ready to learn and make it fun and a good place to meet people. I think people know this, but let's remind those who don't. Tell us about your first company, that first company you were talking about. Silent Whistle. Yeah. Tell us about Silent Whistle and that whole raising money for it and its eventual exit. Like, what was that like? What did you learn from that? Okay. So I started Silent Whistle. I was in school at BYU. My last semester took a class from Larry H. Miller. And I still remember the day he said, if you're going to be, he started as an entrepreneur at 38. And he just talked about that's really rare because at 38, you have mortgages and kids and it's tough to leave your job. So he was like, if you guys are going to do it now. You're young. You have no expenses. If it doesn't work out, fine. You guys are in school. You can get your degree and go get a job. So I just bought in
Mhm.
and went. And when I was in school is when, the Enron stuff blew up. I have a master's of accounting. That's what I was going to school for. So that was what I was kind of in the middle of, is like this kind of accounting world blew up. And so there was a law passed called Sarbanes-Oxley in 2002 that required public companies to have a whistleblower system. And so I called I don't know, at the time there was maybe 50 public companies in Utah. It was way easier to be public back then. There's not that anymore.
Yeah.
And it's because of Sarbanes-Oxley. I just called 10 and found out they either didn't have anything or they had some hotline number that never got used and they don't even know who answered it. So I'm like, hey, this is something we could probably turn into a web-based solution, have anonymity and maybe back and forth communication. So that was it. That was Silent Whistle. And like I said, I'd go to these events and I would just I memorized the list of public companies in Utah. And I just would go to these things like legal ones and accounting ones. And I was just trying to find anyone that worked for a public company. And if I got to them, then I would just work my way to the general counsel or the CFO. And I think partially because I was so young and I was still in school, like I told you, I think they just felt bad. And I could just get anywhere. So I got to Bob Whitman, the CEO of Franklin Covey, and I got to Jonathan Johnson, at the time was the general counsel at Overstock, and just went from there. And then we signed this about a year in, we signed a big partnership deal with Thompson Financial in Boston. They had created a product as well that did this, and they had 500 customers, and they didn't like supporting that product anymore. So they just gave them to me. And that is kind of what launched us.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what just kind of launched us forward. We got Motorola and a bunch of really big customers. So started that in 2003, sold that in 2009 for at the worst time to sell a business. But that company kind of grew really quickly because of Sarbanes-Oxley, but then it kind of plateaued because companies had a solution. So we sold it in 2009 to Global Compliance, who has been acquired and then acquired. But I'd heard recently that Silent Whistle still exists for a couple of customers.
Oh, that's cool.
That was just a lesson on everything. I didn't know how to hire. I didn't know how to raise money. I raised the first few $100,000 from just some local angels on horrible terms. I didn't understand that. I raised some venture debt. I didn't really know what that was at the time, but raise it. It seemed like a good idea. The funding ecosystem didn't exist like it does today.
Yeah.
There were no Kickstarts. There were no albums. It was begging people for $25,000 and seeing if you could pull together $300,000.
And the terms were bad back then.
Yeah. Most of the companies, including Entrata back in 2003, Dave raised his first round at $1 million pre, with crazy terms. It was just hard. But you were pumped to get it. So it was crazy learning experience. Selling, that was the first time I sold a business. And then that kind of launched me from there. And just each one I've done has gotten a little bit bigger. And I guess what I've been fortunate with is my network's kind of built and kind of built on itself along the way. And so there's folks that have, are on their fifth company with me now. And we've kind of all grown up together and figured this thing out.
What was your second one? What's
Allegiance.
the one? So Allegiance, which you sell to Merit CX.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which was a good exit, right?
Yeah. I mean, we sold that business for $70 million or so.
Yeah.
It was a bigger outcome. That's where I learned what, participating liquidation preferences are. Those are the kind of things when you're young, you don't really know what that means. A 1X liquidation preference. Oh, whatever. I don't care. And then you exit and you're like, oh, that's what it means. And you see the math of how those things play out. But that's the business where, that was a hard business to run. It was enterprise sales. When I got into that space, so customer surveys is what it was. I remember talking to someone at Gartner who said there's 100 survey companies and they're all under 5 million in revenue, including the winner now, which is Qualtrics.
Yeah.
SurveyMonkey, all those companies were tiny at the time. It was back in 2008, 2009. So it was super competitive. There wasn't really an industry. I'd try to pitch it to VCs and I wouldn't even know what to call this. It went through various EFM, enterprise feedback management, to CX, to all sorts of terms. And sold it in 2014, really because we kind of just didn't have anywhere else to go. The cap table was a little bit broken because I'd raised money. Wasn't really able to raise more. The company wasn't really growing at a rate where I could keep raising up rounds.
Right.
And so we found a home for it with Merit CX out of St. Louis. But that's really where I learned a lot of the hard lessons I remember, the one after I went to after that was Podium. And it was weird because I felt like everything we did at Allegiance was hard and a lot of it didn't work.
Mhm.
And I just was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. Cause it seems like this should be working. And then I go to Podium and everything worked and everything was easy. And the difference is at Allegiance, we never really got true product market fit.
Mm-hmm.
And Podium had it from the moment they started that business. Yeah. And so I remember a lot of people came with me from Allegiance over to Podium over the years, and that they all saw it. They're like, oh, this is what product market fit feels like. Like everything's easier when you have that. Yeah. Allegiance was a cool one. I look back really fondly, even though like financially it wasn't some massive outcome for any of the investors or any of the employees. Yeah. But it was a great school of hard knocks for me. Yeah.
And then Podium, I mean, when you got there, and even like you said, what Eric and the crew have done over there, it's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And just how fast that was growing and all that type of stuff. And it seems to be doing super well, not even now, but man, that was that was a great time at Utah Tech.
It was nuts. Yeah. I went like 2015 till right before COVID, and that 4.5 years, it was like 0 to 100 million of ARR, like 5 to
that was such a crazy
employees.
Time, actually.
It was nuts. And I loved my time there. Like we raised money from Excel. I actually was talking to Ryan Smith this week. I'm like, that's where I kind of got my mojo back, because Allegiance was so hard on me. Mm-hmm. And I tried everything, and I tinkered with the exec team and tinkered with everything. And I just could never make it go. And then, meanwhile, Ryan just took off at Qualtrics. And you start to just really doubt yourself. Like, maybe I'm not good at this. Like, I really want to be this cool entrepreneur founder guy, and maybe I just don't know what I'm doing, or maybe I'm not maybe I don't work hard enough. I don't know what the problem is, but maybe it's me. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm just not very good. So Eric and Dennis let me come in like a third co-founder and like do my thing again and raise money and hire people. And like, they had such good product market fit. Everything worked immediately. And, like raising money from Excel, I never thought I'd get to raise money from Excel. Like a firm like that, raising money from Google Ventures and IVP. These are all firms that 3 or 4 years before that, I was legends. I would never talk to someone like that. Yeah. So I got a lot of my confidence there, a lot of mojo, probably too much. Like my identity probably became too attached to that success and to that company. So when I left, you and I've talked about this before, I left Podium and took like a year off and kind of got lost. I didn't really know who I was or what I was doing. And but yeah, great business, great team. That was a fun time.
Well, this is something I'm thinking about a lot, actually. And I'm actually writing something about this, is the fact that we attach our identity to like our companies, mm-hmm. or to like what we're doing. Like that's who we are. Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned like how that can be both a positive and a negative. Well, it's a negative, I think, always. But when you're super successful, it's also a negative.
Yeah.
Because you're tying your identity to like a successful company or something, which is not actually you. That's not you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the same is true when, the company's not doing well. That's not you. Mm-hmm. That's not who you are. Yeah. Doesn't mean you're not doing well. You know what I mean? Yeah. And man, if there was one thing I could grab, new entrepreneurs and new founders and just tell them, it's like, you are not your company.
Yeah.
Don't attach your entire identity to this.
Yeah.
It's really bad either way.
Yeah, it really is. It's too easy. Like, this is something I've been thinking a lot about recently is, we all have these masks or play these characters, mm-hmm. and we do it from young ages. Like, to my mom, I'm the little smart kid that obeyed all the rules and the teachers liked. And I remember like my little brother, to my dad, is like the super athlete. Like, we all grow up playing roles, and the roles that bring us negative things, we tend to shed. And the roles that give us positive things, we kind of lean into. Mm-hmm. And then, I think what causes a lot of midlife crises, because you and I know a lot of people get to their 30s and 40s, and like you start to realize like, people like me for this role I play, for this character I created, and it's not me.
Yeah.
And like, as that gap widens, I think that's a lot of the source, at least, I'm not trying to be a therapist here, but for me and for folks I've talked about with it, it's a source for a lot of unhappiness.
For sure.
And depression is like I'm liked or I'm complimented or I'm admired for things that I made up. And to your point on the flip side, like you can fall into the same trap and start to associate yourself to some bad things out there and like start to listen to some of the noise. And it's something that's, I think the probably the happiest people in life are people that can figure out how to just sit in their authentic selves.
Yeah.
And if that's being a CEO or if that's being a landscaper or that's being a doctor, like great. But you're kind of staying true to yourself in all environments. And when you're, and this is something I haven't done well. Like with my family, I'm a certain thing. Yeah. And then with certain friends, I'm a certain thing. Like my bike friends, I'm a certain thing. And that just gets exhausting.
Oh, it gets so, I noticed this about myself during the COVID time. Where like prior to COVID and Silicon Slopes, everyone just loved Silicon Slopes. This 100% approval rating. Like everyone's like, oh, I love what you're working on. Well, I don't even know that I know what I'm working on. So I'm not sure that you know what I'm working on. But man, that validation is really cool. Yeah. To be like, man, what you guys are doing is really cool. This is awesome. You got to interview like Zucker or like whatever it is, right? And then when COVID hit and people started not liking, like not like the community itself, but people from outside the community. I remember there was one MSNBC did a segment on Test Utah. Rachel Maddow did a thing, and I don't even know what it was about. And something about like, hey, here's how Utah's doing it. They're letting like entrepreneurs run the testing in the state of Utah. And she said something in her monologue. It's like, and they call it Silicon Slopes, like very like kind of like demeaning to like the whole idea. It's like, oh, Silicon Slopes. She's like, you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, what the heck? Yeah. People don't like it's possible for people not to like us. That's wild. We're like this little dinky nonprofit, you know what I mean? And like, and then I was like, man, you can't. It took me a few months, but it was like, man, you got to stop like attaching your identity to that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
There's that iconic line in Dark Knight. You either die the hero or you live long enough to become the villain. And I really think that happens to all of us in life. Like no matter what you do, no matter what you say, unfortunately, our society loves to build people up, but then they love to tear them down. Yeah. And I don't know why it is. It's frustrating to see, and narratives get created from little bits of information that just like take off. And it's like, that's just not even a real thing, but it's unfortunate. But it's part of picking like this lifestyle and this,
for sure.
This role,
Yeah. If you're going to do something, and that's like what I finally like had, because it was like it was legitimately like freaking me out. Cause I'd never I don't know if I was attaching my identity prior, but like then when we were getting like criticism, I was like, oh, this is like me getting criticized. I'm like, this isn't you getting criticized. Yeah. What is Rachel Maddow? Rachel Maddow doesn't like, what are we talking about?
It feels real.
It feels real. Yeah, it feels like, oh, this is like the end of everything.
Yeah, whether it's like stuff that appears on Reddit or like Glassdoor, like it hurts. Yeah. Like I remember like about a year ago, I saw Kylie Jenner give an interview and she's like, yeah, when people call me fat on Instagram, it hurts my feelings and I cry sometimes. I'm like, of course you do. Like, these are, everyone's just human. And I do think that that's the danger of you attach yourself to this thing that whether it's great, that's actually not real. And when it's bad, like we said, that's not real either.
Yeah. I think the hard part is to, when it's great, not attach yourself to it. Yeah. And that's the thing, like when, again, like leading up to COVID, like everything was great. Right. And I'm actually not sure whether I was attaching myself to like everything is great, but I certainly was attaching myself to everything is bad.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you suck, dude. You know what I mean? Like what's going on? And then I'd have to step back and go, what are we actually doing here? Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, it seems fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when I've had a couple experiences now where you get some scrutiny from the outside world and it feels like everybody knows. And that every eyeball in the world is on you. And the reality is nobody actually cares.
Yeah.
Like it's all fake. Like you still like get ready and you go to work and then you go to the jazz game and see your friends and like life goes on. And
that's another thing I didn't realize because I thought, man, everyone must be reading this stuff, or, like, I don't think not one person told me about the Rachel Maddow thing. I think that's the first time I've even talked about it.
I didn't know that happened.
I think that's the first time I've ever mentioned it.
But I was paying attention. I didn't know that happened.
But there was this article that was being published in the New Yorker, again, about like Test Utah or Silicon Subs or something. Who knows what it was? It was all around. It was actually all about, which I didn't even get at the time. There was a gubernatorial election going on, and the two candidates were trying any way to hit each other, right? And one of the candidates happened to be the head of COVID. Right?
Yeah.
And so because we were engaged in that, we kind of got, but we didn't even realize that. We didn't even realize like we were just like pawns in a much bigger, like w's going to be governor.
Yeah.
We just thought it was like about us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which was super crazy. But there was like this big New Yorker article. It comes out. And I'm like, oh man, this is crazy. I wonder what this is gonna like mean for everybody.
Yeah.
And I remember I bumped into Susan Peterson like a week after, and I'm like, man, what did you think of that New Yorker article? Good friend of mine, Susan.
Yeah.
Like, what New Yorker? Well, they wrote like all this. She's like, that's good. Publicity's good. What do you care?
Right. Yeah. Nobody cares.
I was like, if you don't know,
Everyone's got their own stuff.
yeah,
We're all
it doesn't
dealing with our
matter.
own stuff.
It doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, for sure.
So what was that? Like, how do you recommend? Because I'm seeing this more and more. You did something that I think is really smart. When you left Podium, you go to Southern California, San Clemente, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of take that year, do a lot of biking, a lot of focusing on yourself. That's so healthy to do. What I'm seeing more and more, particularly post-COVID, is so much mental health challenges within our community, in particular with founders and entrepreneurs and those who are like on this really lonely journey, right? Where community is like super necessary, but who can you actually talk to about some of the things that you know what I mean? Like there's no like higher up a department that you can go to and say, I need you guys to solve this as a founder or as like whatever. What do you recommend? And what are you seeing with other peers or people within your company?
You know, what helped me that year. So my tendency is to recharge by myself. Like, that's why I bike. I do 99% of my biking by myself. You know, I just go hop on my bike. I ride up AF Canyon. I jump on the trails, whatever it is. That year I took off, I was really fortunate that some people in San Clemente didn't let me do that. I golfed a lot with Clark Miyasaki and Jonathan Ord, and they just made me go. And on my bike, a couple of good buddies, my Gould Eric Steven down there, they would drag me out of my house to go bike with them. And that human connection is kind of what revived me. And it's what I have a tendency to shy away from that. I don't know why, but I've been like that quite a bit the last several years. That's one thing that worries me that we're losing in the world right now is that like human connection. Like I'm the person that like RSVPs for everything and shows up for nothing. Cause you know, I don't want to like, if I'm not working or with my kids, I'm on my bike or I'm, whatever. And I think it's a dangerous thing. Like I was listening to a podcast recently. I think it was Simon Sinek and Lewis Howes. And they were just talking about the journey we all go through to find self-love. And I think it was Lewis that said, it's, that's a lifelong journey for all of us. And he said, I really don't think you can start to make progress on that journey. I'm paraphrasing here. You can't start making progress on that journey until you have one person in your life that likes you for you and likes to be around you for you. And I've thought a lot about that, and it can't be your parents because you play a role for them. You play a role for your siblings. You play a role for your spouse. You play a role for your kids. You play a role at work. And I've been fortunate over the last couple of years to find a couple of people like that. And that has helped me get through hard times. I've had like some real rough times over the last couple of years. And I have, one friend that has a place in Malibu, and he could tell anytime I was getting rough, he would drag me down there and, throw me in the ocean or get me on my bike going up those hills in Malibu. And that's, I think, what's most important. And it's probably the hardest thing to do, because I imagine a lot of people are like me when you're like headed down a negative path or listening to some negative thought patterns. Like I don't want to have human connection then.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is because I don't want to put it on anyone else. That feels like that would make me a burden, or I'm asking, like, I don't like to be a person like, hey, I need some of your energy. Like I'm pretty like depleted right now. Can you help me? That's just not kind of how I roll. If you're a person that has a lot of those relationships, like I have like siblings and friends that have a lot of that, and they're just really authentic and open. But if you're like me, and those kind of connections are fewer and more valuable, like I would just say, invest in those. Don't ignore them. It's easy to do that, but that's what worries me the most is like, we're just like increasingly in an isolated world.
Yeah. And you've been the CEO of Entrata for a number of years now. Monster company. Could be one of the first generational companies that gets built in Utah. Like, I'm not sure that people fully understand just the incredible company that Entrata is. As you think about your legacy, as you think about who you are as a leader now versus when you were, like, what goes through your mind as you're like sitting on this, again, kind of like the crown jewel of the tech community currently?
Yeah, I mostly just feel really fortunate. Like, this business is nuts. It was probably 170 or so of ARR when I joined, and we're like over $500 million now. Like, it's a beast. We serve a customer base that has been starving for good software, and they're performing a really important task for humanity. They're managing the experience of living for a lot of students, for a lot of young people, for a lot of new families, and helping people through these emotional events in life, whether it be graduation or a birth or a death or a divorce. And when I got to this industry, I was just kind of appalled. And I saw this a little bit when I was at Podium. There's certain industries that just have horrible software. Mm-hmm. And this was one of them. And so that's kind of the mission that we have. And that's one thing. It's easy to get behind that mission. The business was built in the right way over a long period of time. It was 18 years old when I joined. So I take like literally none of the credit for how great this business is, because a lot of people put a lot into this business. Almost no money went into it. Like, I've told people, like, if you're gonna make a list of the top 5 entrepreneurs ever in Utah, like, Dave's on that list. Mm-hmm. Like, to build this kind of a business with no money and really kind of by himself from like,
he kept that cap table super clean.
It's nuts. And so I kind of came into, it was like, there wasn't a lot of financial reporting. There was not a lot of the stuff I was used to that like a venture capital or private equity firm would want to see. And that's where kind of I brought a little bit of value. Is like, hey, I can just bring some structure to some really good ingredients here. And then brought in just a team. This is the best team I've ever worked with and ever will work with. Like, I was thinking last week, I haven't even met anybody I would trade for any of my execs.
That's incredible.
They're all amazing. And so we're all fired up to go build something really, really big, really, really special. I've said this before. This company deserves to be great because of how much went into it by so many people. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to just play a small role. We've got great investors. It's a great industry. It's just a really fun one to be a part of. And I do think, like you said, I think it's going to be multi-generational. I think this business will be around in 20 or 30 years, still being like kind of the standard for multifamily software. Like I said, I'm really grateful. There's every day I like pinch myself. I'm like, who decided to put me in charge of a $500 million business? So every day we're all kind of doing the kind of like the next biggest thing we've ever done than we did the day before, but love the team across the board. It's a really special place.
You mentioned like, it's not even a great time to go public, and it's harder to go public and all this type of stuff. But I'm sure like you start to build at least the muscles necessary to go public if you ever wanted to or needed to, right? Are you implementing some of that?
This business could be public. I think it will be a good public company one day because it's so predictable. It's, we grow well, we're profitable, like has all the ingredients to be a great public company. You hear the phrase from CEOs who are public or CFOs saying like, now's just not a good time to be public. Well, I've been hearing that for like 5 years now, other than that short window in 2021 where everybody went public through SPACs. But since then, there's not a lot of reason to do it anymore because there's so much capital available outside the public markets. I think the 5 or 6 biggest tech companies in Utah are all owned by private equity now.
Yeah.
Qualtrics is, Silver Lake. Entrata, I think, is the next biggest is Silver Lake. Pluralsight was bought out by Vista. Instructure was Toma. They just sold that to KKR, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Landesk, I don't know what the name of Landesk is anymore, owned by private equity. And I think there's a reason for that. And I think it's going to continue. That was actually, I was at a banking conference, I don't know, several months ago. And I asked if they would continue, if that would continue, or do the public markets ever make a comeback? And I think it was the CEO of Goldman Sachs said, there's so much wealth that's going to transfer from the baby boomers down over the next couple of decades. And a lot of that's going to find its way into private equity and venture capital firms. So his take was this trend will probably continue. And I've loved it. You hear nightmares about private equity. Like I remember when Silver Lake decided they were going to, buy a majority in the business a few years ago. I called the CEO of Silver Lake, Egon, a good friend, and was like, hey, I'm not your guy. I'm not a private equity guy. I don't know how to do this. They had been a minority investor for about 6 months. And he told me on that call, he said, what you've seen from us as a minority investor is what you're going to get as a majority. And true to his word, that's how it's been. I've really, really loved it. And it allows you, being a private company, I still have access to the capital we need or debt that we need or whatever, any help that I need. But we can make kind of long-term bets that might hurt in the short term, but are going to benefit everybody in the long term because I don't have the scrutiny of the public markets that are asking me why I'm doing it. It's a good one though.
What are you thinking about AI? How are you implementing it into the product, into your workflows, just internally?
Yeah. So from a customer perspective, we bought a company out of Tel Aviv last summer, an AI company. If you think about the process of finding an apartment, submitting an application for an apartment, submitting maintenance requests, that's all really automatable. Do you allow pets? What is your pet policy? What do you have a gym? Do you have a common area for rent? Like that's stuff that AI can handle really, really well. So last year at our customer conference, we announced the creation of autonomous property management. And if you think of autonomous driving, that can be anywhere from, cruise control is like the first version of autonomous driving all the way up to Waymos. And for our customer base, they're going to want to be anywhere on that spectrum. So that's the way we think about it from building a product is if you just want cruise control and just a little bit of automation, great. If you want to have full automation doing everything, that's what we're building towards as well. And anything in between. So that's how we look at it from a customer perspective. I think it's going to be really disruptive in our industry in particular. I think it's going to go, I think it's going to be a really positive thing for our customers. And then internally, we've been, I'd say for the first couple of years, we were toying around and then we really started to find some pretty amazing advantages over the last 6 months or so. Like all of our QA, all of our testing is done by AI now. A lot of our code is being written by AI. We had kind of an outbound sales effort that we thought we were going to have to go hire a bunch of SDRs for. We created an AI that does that. So internally, it's like, and you can see the light bulb go off. And I think any company is going to have to go through this cultural shift. It's why I think, it was the CEO of Shopify and I think Datadog recently that they've come out and just said, hey, we're AI first. We're not going to hire jobs anymore unless we prove AI can't do it. And that's what they're trying to do is just force people through the mindset to think a little bit differently. And honestly, some people don't like it. I remember I heard Elon Musk talk about the Doge efforts, and he used this phrase. He said, we knew there'd be a really strong antibody response to it. And I think the same thing happens inside companies with AI right now is there's a massive antibody response to it that if you're a leader, you kind of have to sift through what's true and what isn't true. And I don't think we're headed to a world where the machines are doing everything. And it's like WALL-E where we're all just sitting on these space cruise ships weighing 500 pounds. But I do think it's going to change the way businesses run, especially tech companies.
Yeah, for sure.
I think a lot of the stuff that's been done by humans is going to be, because, it's tech. We work in computers all day long. A lot of what we do is going to be pretty easily, it's like a one-step adjacency to teach a computer to do it. So, I'm telling my kids right now, I've got a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old, go do anything you can inside AI right now, because the computer science jobs that have existed for the last 30 or 40 years aren't going to exist in the same form very quickly in the next year, 2 years.
Yeah.
The change is going to come fast.
Yeah. It blows my mind just how fast. I mean, it's probably changed just while we've been sitting here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how it feels. Sometimes it's just like so crazy how fast it happens. Finally, what do you think like Utah needs? Like in order for us to keep this magic that we have, which I do think we have, how do we maintain it? As you think about the future, like next 10 years, what should we be doing as a community, as a state? What are we doing well? What aren't we doing well?
Yeah, I think, I guess first from a tech perspective, you and I've talked about this before. I think we need to have some generational platform companies that can exist for 30, 40 years. You know, like we talked about that podcast I did. No one knows what Novell was. No one knows what WordPerfect was. Those were valuable companies back in the day. Altiris, they don't exist anymore. We need to start to create some companies that are decades. The Bay Area has a ton of them and New York has some, but we haven't really built very many. I think Qualtrics is one. I think this business will be one. So that's one thing I've talked about. And one of the reasons we need that is the talent that is built through those kind of companies. CFOs that know how to take a company public, CROs that have managed hundreds or thousands of reps globally. We just need kind of those at-bats. And I think the talent and the knowledge is going to trickle down, and it's just going to create a better environment for everybody. Because the talent environment is so much better than when I started. And that's partially why, because there's been some big businesses that have grown up here and gotten to a size where people start to see things that are, you know, historically weren't done in Utah very often.
Yeah.
I think from a community standpoint, I think it's what we hit on. I think we have to figure out how to keep Utah a little Utah-ish. Like everyone's so angry right now in the world. Like I was in Paris last week and look, French people have never liked Americans. They really don't like us now. And I just think like the political environment, everything's going on, no matter what side you stand on. Like
Europe hates us.
Oh, everyone's
Europe
just so mad. And I think it's easy to have that happen here too.
Yeah, for sure.
And the two sides that are the minority that are just so loud and can create, you know, tension that doesn't need to be there. And so I have a lot of respect for what the Millers have done, what Ryan's doing. There are some like community assets here that do have like this funny way of bringing us all back together.
Yeah.
Like the Jazz, like the University of Utah, BYU, Utah State, RSL. The hockey team now, I'd say the hockey team might be more unifying than all of them.
I think it is because it's like ours. You know what I mean? There's like something like, yeah, the hockey team. And even like, I don't know if you've been to a Bees game yet since the Millers took it over and
I haven't
put
been
it
to
to Daybreak.
place.
But like even that, I was like, I went to one of those and I was like, they're picking spots and places, these families like Ryan and the Millers and Eccles, which you would say have a big deal with the University of Utah and what happens there, and Huntsman's and those types of folks. They're picking spots that are like everybody can get behind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and we're lucky. We have a good leadership here with Spencer, who's not an extremist either way.
Yeah.
Like, you know, DEI probably swung too far in 2020 and 2021, and now I feel like it's swung too far the other way. And that's one thing I hope Utah keeps is don't join that extremist dialogue that is so easy to get into.
We might.
Yeah.
It does feel like there are factions of it here in Utah that I thought I would never see on both ends of that spectrum, right? Not just one. So it's pretty wild. But thank you for the leader that you are. Thank you for joining Silicon Slopes. Seriously, it's an honor to have you on the board. And thanks for coming back, man.
Yeah.
See you in 2 years on the show.
All right. Yep. We'll be due.